Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I welcome you into our meeting of torchbearers. We will conduct someone of great import to many of us into our Hall of Heroes. I speak, of course, of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, called HPB by her friends and many who find her name very long and don't want to handle it. I'm Greek, so I was also gifted with a name that's very long and hard to pronounce and so on. I will quickly share my tale of HPB, and then we will move onwards to our other guests for tonight, torchbearers all. I became aware of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky in high school. I had a very magical childhood, and I was well versed in all sorts of ancient and arcane lore. And I had many friends during high school who were also interested in the same thing, so we used to experiment, have seances, levitate ourselves and other things, and so on and so forth. And one of my friends told me about this group she belonged to. So I was concerned that she was joining a cult, so I asked if I could meet the people in the group. So she said, sure. So I went to one of their meetings, and it was a mediumship type of thing where somebody would go into trance and somebody would speak through them and so forth. And so it was very interesting. And afterwards, we went out for dinner, and I started feeling very fuzzy. And then I started feeling energy shooting up my spine. And then when it got to my head kind of exploded. So I don't really take substances, and so this was something that my brain just exploded. And then something started talking through me. And the people there seemed to know who this was because they had a very lively conversation. And then some words were spoken, and I became their new medium. I didn't even know about mediums except for the oracles of antiquity until then. But here I was the medium, and I gave them some information and some signs that they were looking for, and that was my interview, and that's what I was doing. And this group called themselves nothing. They were just doing the work, and their goal was to help people develop character on a spiritual level. That's how they defined the work that they were doing. But it was a lot of mediumship and things like that also involved. So I started reading Theosophy, Blavatsky Theosophy, because that's one of the authoritative authors that they held. And Blavatsky was somebody who came through a lot of their channels and talked to them directly. Now, Blavatsky, according to her writings, would have been horrified that her theosophy blended with spiritualism, but that's what exactly became. That's what gave birth to the I Am movement also. I didn't really know too much about the I Am movement or the Bridge to Freedom, because back then the white books and green books were impossible to find unless you knew about them. And even the places like Weiser's and the antiquarian bookstores in New York, it was too expensive and it would take too long a time to get the books. So I didn't have the books until much later. To make a very long story short, I found Theosophy very interesting because I was aware of Theosophy from the Hellenistic times, but I wasn't aware of what Blavatsky done with it. And I saw that the great value in Theosophy wasn't in the truths that it contained, because Blavatsky lets you know at certain points that not everything in the book is actually correct or representationally perfect, that it's been obscured because some information is too dangerous to release. But she seemed to have provided with a structure and a vocabulary to the occult that was non-Abrahamic and was applicable to a lot of different types of ways of looking at the world. And although my mediumship took place in people's parlors mostly, which is what they call their living rooms back in the day when channelers were called deep trance mediums, the first public talk I gave was in the United Lodge of Theosophists in the 70s, I think, on the East Side. So I've always held a very warm spot for HPB. A portrait of HPB hangs downstairs on our wall. And that's my story with HPV. And so now we will move to Apulia, Apulia, do you have anything you'd like to say about Helena Petrovna Blavatsky?
Yes, I would. I want to begin by saying that as a teenager, my sister got me started in many spiritual topics. I continued on. She was very interested in Edgar Cayce, so I joined the ARE. There, I met a lot of people that were involved with Gurdjieff groups and with Theosophy. During that time, I learned something of Madame Blavatsky. I thought she was very interesting. I know just very basic things about her, but I do know that she influenced a lot of people. So Mahatma Gandhi was very influenced by her. He actually said, I got this from a book called The Life of Mahatma Gandhi, that Theosophy is the teaching of Madame Blavatsky. It's Hinduism at its best. Theosophy is the brotherhood of humanity, of man. It was through Theosophy that Gandhi was induced to study his own heritage. He met these English people in England, Theosophists who knew the Bhagavad Gita. He had never read that. He didn't know that much about his own background. He felt ashamed, so he became very interested in Theosophy. That's one person. I also know Albert Einstein is said to have had Isis unveiled on his bookshelf in his office, so he must have known something of Madame Blavatsky. His students, too. Some of the people that I met when I was a teenager, I'm old enough to remember to meet people like this. They were very old, and they actually knew Alice Bailey, who was one of her students or offshoots. I don't know if she was her student, but she was definitely an offshoot. Was very interested in her work and wrote many books on it and founded her own study. It was actually it was called Lucifer Publishing. Lucifer later changed to the Lucius Trust. She wrote many books about this, and they're still in existence today. They have something called triangles. They have an arcane school where they do full moons, meditation practices. I went to some of those at the beginning, and the people in my group, as I said before, actually knew Alice Bailey. Another offshoot was Annie Besant. Annie Besant, who actually was involved with the liberation of India from the British Empire. And there's even a street named after her, I understand. So it's very interesting how influential Madame Blavatsky was. I had seen this thing, perhaps some people here know the Great Invocation. That was written, it was a mantra written by Alice Bailey, just to get back to her for a minute. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men, etc., etc. They also knew Krishnamurti, who was, I think, part of that as well. So that's what I wanted to share with you, that I actually had this experience. And the Lucius Trust still meets at the UN. So they're still meeting today, if anyone is interested in joining them.
Thank you, Apulia. I'm on their mailing list too, and I got that from the Lucius Trust as well. Alice Bailey's Labors of Hercules were part of what I talked about in my first talk at the United Lodge of Theosophists, plus all the information she had on the mythic Hercules Blavatsky in the Isis Unveiled, which contains all sorts of interesting. You will walk in the nostalgia for those days when I was involved with all that. Thank you very much. And now we move on to Ammon, who has a very extensive background with Theosophy.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Hello, Hercules. Thank you so much for having me tonight to talk about HPB, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. I did it. Madam Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. Yeah, there were when you were just talking, Apollonia, that about the people that Blavatsky influenced. You know, there's also Benjamin Creme with Share International.
Oh, I know who he is. Yes.
Yeah, and also like Hercules mentioned the I Am movement with the Ballards, and of course Elizabeth Clare Prophet and Mark Prophet with the Summit Lighthouse, and then later on after Mark Prophet passed away, then it became Elizabeth Clare transformed it into Church Universal and Triumphant. My wife was very my wife was very influenced by the prophets and loved Elizabeth Clare Prophet. She was one of her heroes. And also Kandinsky, the painter, the abstract painter, Kandinsky took a lot of his ideas, his art theory from Theosophy. He was a Theosophist too. And me too. I'm very influenced by Blavatsky, as my wife was. As a matter of fact, it was my wife who first introduced me to Theosophy. And an interesting story is that my wife and her family, her first husband with her family with her first husband, they were regular guests of the Theosophists who had their headquarters in Altadena, California. It was the branch that kind of broke off from the original branch after Blavatsky died. William Judge took a group, and they became the American section of the Theosophical Society. So they eventually moved their headquarters to Altadena, California, near Pasadena. And my wife and her family at that time, they befriended Grace Kanoke, who was the leader of the American section at that time in the early 90s. They also were great friends with Kirby Van Matter and John Van Matter. Kirby Van Matter was the like second in command at that time. So her family went up to Pasadena often to meet with them, have lunch with them, and talk with them. They were very good friends. Our home, where Diane lived at that time with her family, was only about an hour and a half southeast of Pasadena in Mission Viejo, California. Well, in April of 1991, there were a couple times that Diane and her family visited the headquarters of the American section up there with Grace and Kirby, because there was a celebration of Helena Blavatsky's life. Helena Blavatsky passed away on May 8th, 1891. So they were celebrating the 100th year in 1991 of her passing. Well, this was in April, and I have right here a card. I don't know if you can see it. Diane was named Shepherd at the time, but this is a card that they gave her when she became a member. So it was at that time in 1991, in early April, that Diane became a member of the Theosophical Society. Well, in May of 1991, 1 month later, May 8th, 1991 to be exact, was when I met my wife, Diane, at my college. So exactly 100 years to the day after Blavatsky passed away was the day I met my wife.
Wow.
Yes. So I believe we have quite a connection there with HPB in some way. So
I would agree.
And so, yeah, so 100 years to the day we met. And she introduced me to Theosophy. And one of the first challenges she gave me when we first met, because she had a vast spiritual background, studying a lot of different spiritualities, and I was studying a little bit myself. But her oldest son and her introduced me to Theosophy. One of the first challenges she gave me was, she said, okay, here I have this book by Blavatsky called The Key to Theosophy. Okay, here's my book. if you read this book from cover to cover, I will give you one of my Egyptian rings, right? Because Diane, she was a big
Yeah.
collector of Egyptian, Greek, everything. So, and I love rings. I love rings. I love jewelry, just like Michael does too. And I so I really loved this beautiful Egyptian ring she had. Actually, it was a reproduction of a King Tut ring. So she said, if you read the Key to Theosophy from cover to cover, I'll give you the ring. So I did. I read it from cover to cover and was just astounded. And I really appreciated that in the Key to Theosophy, she mentions, because one of the inquirers asks her about vegetarianism, says, oh, do you guys in the Theosophical Society, do you push vegetarianism? Do you demand it? And she said, well, no, not really. For like real hardcore students, like in the esoteric section, yes. But for the laity, we suggest it, So I was very interested in vegetarianism at the time I met Diane and was reading that book. So after that, I dove right into the secret doctrine and just absolutely fell in love with it, loved it, loved all the concepts. And from there, Isis unveiled and so on and so forth. So, so that was really neat. And it was about 3 years later, about 3 years later, I went up to the headquarters of the American section in Pasadena. I became a member myself, became really good friends with Kirby and John and Grace Kanoki too. So I became a member of the Theosophical Society. But some sad news. I don't know if you guys knew this, but we had the wildfires in California when I was living in California in January of this year, 2025. The fires spread, Pacific Palisades and all that. The fires spread to that area of Altadena and some parts of Pasadena. And I'm sad to say that the Theosophical Library, which was the biggest Theosophical library in the United States, was burned to the ground.
Wow.
The Deodar House, the mansion, the headquarters of the American section that we went to, with Grace and all them, burned to the ground. And the church where they had the celebration of the 100 years of Blavatsky's life in 91, that also burned down. And they said, I saw an article that said that a lot of the archives, actually most of the archives in the library were lost, which contained a lot of Blavatsky's unpublished letters. So those are all poof, up in smoke. So just one more thing I wanted to share with you guys, though. Let's see. So you said, Hercules, did you say you had some memorabilia from Blavatsky?
I have a picture of Blavatsky. When you come into her house, my wife moves around all our ritual stuff, and so that moves around, but it's in that big room as soon as you come in the door. HB is with us, and the group that I was involved in, I think, was an offshoot of one of her esoteric groups. And when he was alive, the medium was George Wayner. He was friends with Talbot Mundy. They wrote a book called Curious Life, and he became famous because he channeled Rudolph Valentino. Natasha was part of his circle. So that's my pedigree.
But were you going to say something?
No.
Okay. When you have those, because we have a poster too, and it's our poster is the one like with the piercing eyes, that are like looking at you like saying, you behave or I'm gonna get you. Okay, so I just wanted to share one little thing of memorabilia with everybody. This is something that we've had on our refrigerator since I moved into our house in California in 1995. It's been on the refrigerator the whole time, every refrigerator. It's called the Golden Stairs. and it was written by H.P. Blavatsky. It's pretty short. Here it is. It's called The Golden Stairs. A clean life, an open mind, a pure heart, an eager intellect, an unveiled spiritual perception, a brotherliness for all, a readiness to give and receive advice and instruction, a courageous endurance of personal injustice, a brave declaration of principles, a valiant defense of those who are unjustly attacked, and a constant eye to the ideal of human progression and perfection which the sacred science depicts. These are the golden stairs, up the steps of which the learner may climb to the temple of divine wisdom. H.P. Blavatsky.
Wow,
So,
that is powerful. Thank you so very much, Ammon.
yeah, thanks. And on the back, there's a little thing by Annie Besant too. That's kind of nice. Well, thank you, Hercules. Thank you guys for letting me share that. A real special thing with Blavatsky and my wife, having met 100 years to the day after Blavatsky's death.
And when I came out to San Diego, some friends took me to some theosophical structure. It looked like a castle. It was a very large structure. So I don't know if
Yes.
you're describing or another one, but I'm fortunate enough to have been there before it disappeared.
Was that the Spalding home and with the Greek amphitheater at
I
Point
believe
Loma?
I believe so.
Yeah. Yeah, that was Catherine Tingley who carried on Blavatsky's work down there in San Diego area.
Thank you so very much.
Thanks, guys.
And now we're going to go to Paul Dale Roberts, who's also known as the Demon Hunter because of his many adventures in the paranormal.
Well, thank you, Hercules. And I just want to ask Michael Duncan, when that Blavatsky's library burned down, were there any copies of her books that were saved by maybe if they digitized them or anything like that?
You know, that's a good question. I tried to reach out to them. But you know, there aren't a lot of connections with the American section. There's the group that's in Wheaton, Illinois, and then of course there's the Adyar in India. I wasn't able to really reach anybody, but you know what? I'll try again. And find out. I mean, yeah, because that's a tragedy.
Oh, yeah, it's just like the Library of Alexandria. When that burned down, I mean, all those scrolls and everything else,
Yeah.
all that history destroyed, gone.
I'm going to throw something in here. There are vast collections of theosophical books available free online. Or there have been in the past, because I've linked to them when I do certain groups.
Yeah.
And also, when I was starting to be active again publicly, I contacted the Theosophical Societies to find out how do you form like a connection with the Theosophical Society, told my podcasts and things like that. I interviewed a few Theosophists globally, but the consensus seems to be unofficially, feel free to create your own Theosophical. They're not really that invested in seeding themselves.
Yeah, I know.
And thank God for Google Books, because their objective is to go ahead and digitize all the books in the world. So I think that needs to be done. My thoughts on Madame Blavatsky, if I say that name right, I learned about her when I was a ghostwriter, paranormal investigator for Nancy Bradley, and she was considered as a celebrity psychic. And one of the things that she told me, you got to excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold, so my voice kind of fades in and out. She says that when you reach the top, like Madame Blavatsky did, you have your critics below trying to pull you down. And now, Madame Blavatsky, she accomplished a lot. She helped a lot of people. A lot of people respect her for her words and everything else. But there's these critics out there that considered her as a charlatan. I don't know if Harry Houdini went after her or anything like that, but they were trying to say that she was producing fraudulent paranormal phenomenon. Her biography was contradicting, and which was kind of interesting. And even if it was, who cares? I mean, there was like a section where it says that she was in Tibet, but then if you read this other portion of the diary, she's in Italy. So you can't be in both places at the same time. But uh, but that's what makes a legend. Their story just builds up and up. I mean, you look at Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid said that he killed 21 people for every year of his life, but actually, in reality, he only killed 9 people. But people love to build their legends, and if that's what she did, who cares? I mean, it just makes it more fascinating. And if she's not going to build up her legend, Hollywood movies will. Like they'll do a Hollywood movie and they go, "Wait a minute, did Blavatsky really do that?" Well, according to Hollywood, she did. So that I love it. I love legends being built up. Look at Dracula. I mean, geez, that's a huge legend. Um, and then they were saying that her tales of Tibet, going to Tibet, isn't true, but I really don't care. She was a fascinating woman. People loved her. People learned from her, and she is a legend, and she will always be a legend, and she'll live on forever. And that's my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Paul. The word theosophy, Theosophia, comes from the Hellenistic age, which is when Greece was predominant during the age of Alexander, and then the early time of the Caesars, when there was like a culture that was united around the Mediterranean. And scholars and initiates and occultists, they were able to converse more freely because there was a lot of travel. And what they found was that there were 2 levels of teachings. One was the exoteric, which means outside, and the other was the esoteric, which means inside in Greek. So even though the exoteric was very mythical and very culturally influenced, the esoteric, the occultism, that was kind of universal and dealt with things like the planets and navigation and all sorts of other esoteric topics. So Ammonius Saccas, who was a dock worker and a thinker during the Hellenistic age, came to the term theosophy to describe the esoteric part of the spiritualities of the time. And theosophy went underground after the triumph of the Abrahamic religions, and it became the loot of magical fraternities who kept it alive. And for a while, it would pop up, like there was a Christian theosophy at one point that popped up. And Blavatsky took theosophy out of its slumber. She incorporated a lot of the magical elements that kept it alive during the time of ignorance. And she also spread its circle where it was no longer just concerned with around the Mediterranean Sea and a little bit into India, but it became more global in its scope of cultures that it encompassed. So that's where the word theosophy comes from. And then now we differentiate Blavatsky theosophy to differentiate between the ancient theosophy and the magical theosophy. And then we have the I Am movement, which is, as Ammon shared with us, Elizabeth Prophet, Geraldine Innocente, the Ballards, and all those bunches of people who started the modern movement, which is fairly large at this point. And politicians, I've heard them give speeches from the I Am movement without identifying it such in their rallies. So it's very interesting, the history of that, but that's a little beyond the scope today. And I'm going to be doing something very theosophical. Right now we have a show that 2 people here, Ammon and Setna, are involved with about the cerulean sphere. And that has a lot of elements of theosophy in that I'm incorporating and doing my own version of theosophy. So thank you very much to everybody so far. And now we're going to go to someone whose family knew Blavatsky. We're going to go to Setna of Khemet.
They say my grandmother's people, perhaps it was my great-grandmother, they were table tilters. And somewhere along the line, while they were in Europe, they had come across Madame Blavatsky. And, I don't know what went on with that. There was a lot of spiritual energies and things. But she also said, my grandmother and her name was Lillian Barth. There was also, let me get it right, Tressa, and also Charlotte and Gertrude were the four that were the four Barth sisters. There were three other sisters that were table tilters. There were seven sisters, and they thought that was very magical. And one of them, I believe it was Gertrude, said that she was able to contact Blavatsky. Now, of course, that was in the 1920s and 30s, and so everyone was contacting everybody. You did mention Rudolph Valentino, and of course Harry Houdini. So, that was the period where all those things were going on. I learned about Helena Blavatsky at Magical Child in New York City. I didn't meet her, obviously, it was long, long time dead. But I found Isis Unveiled. I was looking through Egyptian different books and things to increase my knowledge. And at first, I saw this book on Isis, I thought. And then I saw the musings and the knowledge and things, and I understood what she was talking about. Isis, of course, is one of the chief deities in the Kemetic worship. And so according to certain people, Blavatsky sat on top of a mountain in Tibet, meditated, and wrote this beautiful treatise. But as Ron said, it could be or could not be true. Someone upstairs is doing something strange. But whatever the case is, like you said, that, she brought all that knowledge to bear and brought hundreds and hundreds of people throughout the years to thinking and using theosophy, using the knowledge that they have inside themselves. I remember her in one of her books saying to look inward and listen to your inner voices and your inner self, and bringing that out to be able to teach other people what she said was what you learn, which is also what you perhaps remember, which goes back to Aristotle. He said that knowledge was something you remembered more than it was something that you would learn now. And many of the Indian gurus say the same thing. For instance, playing the sitar, they say takes 200 years to learn. So they say that they learn it through many different lives. And of course, then you've got the Dalai Lama, who they say has been the same Dalai Lama for at least, 400 years?
Longer.
Right. So, that being has continued through different transferences from one body into the next. There's a wonderful little movie called The Littlest Buddha, which talks about Lama Dorje and how he goes from his current body into where he was passing away into incarnation. And he splits his soul into four children. Each one of them has a certain aspect of him. It's a very good movie. It has Keanu Reeves in it, and some children, and also Bridget Fonda, and Chris Isaac, who's a singer, who plays the father in the movie. It's a very, very interesting movie. It shows a very, very much the beginning of Buddhism and how Siddhartha went from being a prince to being what I would call a very high spiritual saint. So my take was that I learned basically reading the books. And as I said, Magical Child was where I ran into this. And it was by accident. I wouldn't have read Isis Unveiled if it didn't say Isis. So I was looking at, oh my goodness. And I read all this and I started the beginning and I said, what is this? This has got nothing to do with the goddess Isis. What's going on here? And I read more and more. But remember, I was probably 16 or 17. And, I was at first annoyed. And then the light came on and said, dum dum, read this, learn. And so I did. I'm very honest about it. You don't pick up things by accident. Of course not. It was meant that I learned this. And then later on, I showed it to my grandmother. She said, oh, yes, we know all about her. And I wondered, you said she died in 1901?
1891.
1891. Okay,
Yeah.
so my grandmother couldn't possibly have known her. My grandmother wasn't born until 1901 or 1902, so I guess it was that they conjured or brought her forth.
Well, that's
And
she
what
was
they were
very
saying,
chatty in these groups. Well,
I
that's
think so. They were all
deciding
tasing
things from
filters and
beyond. And her character was described very accurately by Ammon, with the sternness, looking at you is
Oh, yeah.
she's going to
well, you
correct
can see
me.
it in her. You can see
You're
it in her
understood me
face.
and you're going to get
She had
corrected.
from the photographs I saw, she'd had that very intense stare. Like,
Yes.
how dare you even think about thinking that whatever I'm saying is wrong? But they were pictured, they were talking about how she had produced ectoplasm and how some miracle that I read where she opened her cape and roses fell out, hundreds and hundreds of roses.
Wow.
And, people that were going to debunk her would have said, oh, that's a trick, that they had checked her cake beforehand. How did those roses get manifested? She did it because she could, you know?
And also, too, did Harry Houdini go after her?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Okay.
But I believe she was either dead by then or that he went after her. He went after the Theosophists. He thought they were all like Harry Houdini and what was his name? The amazing Randy. They both went after anybody who was psychic for disbelieving everything. I've been to Harry Houdini's grave. It's in Glendale in Queens, in New York, and you get a chill when you get there. There's an energy there. I don't know if he's still hanging around, but you can feel the energy there. And I didn't know I was going to do that. And we went. It was 1985 with my original housemate, and his friend Chuck took us there because they lived in Glendale. And we got to the cemetery, and there were all these people laying roses there's a big memorial to him that's there. I believe there's a bust of his head also that's there. And it was very scary because the energy was, I believe he was manifesting there and pleased that all those people were there to remember him.
And that kind of makes me think about when I went to Paris in 1974. I went to Jim Morrison's grave,
Oh dear.
and
Oh, right.
you can
Yeah.
feel, yeah, you can feel a lot of energy right there.
They say. And is his wife now buried right next to him also?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I remember reading something. So that was my 2 cents about Helena Blavatsky. I learned a great deal reading the books. I learned to look very much inward into myself, and also not to discount anything. You know, I believe that if you really believe you can do something, that you can. If you have the wherewithal, or if you have the will, and you say this is going to be so. I manifested this apartment. I needed to find a place to live in 2 months with no money, none. I didn't know what I was going to do. And out of nowhere, I looked into the marketplace in Facebook, which I've never done in my whole life. I didn't even know it existed. And I found these two girls that were the proprietresses, or the superintendents of this place. We talked, and out of nowhere, sight unseen, I said, yes, I want this place. I came down, and my apartment is palatial. It's very large. 2 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms. I have a garage. I have a beautiful screened-in patio. They have access to a swimming pool, a gym, all kinds of wonderful amenities that in New York City I couldn't possibly afford. And here I am in Savannah, Georgia, and I'd never been here before in my life. But a voice said, "Go here," and here I am, and my health improved, my inner being improved, and I just think I'm in a much better place in my life. And I do owe that, I should say, or what do you want to say? I would say I will owe that to, or take that part of my faith in theosophy, and the fact that I knew I could do it because I was told in my mind that I had the wherewithal to do this.
And we're of an age, so we were both reading Blavatsky around the same time. I was in my mid-teens also when I first started tackling those books. Thank you so very much, Setna of Khemet. And now, last but certainly not the least, we get to the most experienced magician among us. We go to Alan Greenfield, and I can't wait to see what he's going to share with us.
Well, I think that it's appropriate to honor one of the Victorian masters of magic. You know, even Aleister Crowley, who is usually considered to be left-handed path, and Blavatsky is usually considered right-handed path. Although I think those appellations are not necessarily universally true of either person. But in any case, Crowley regarded Madame Blavatsky as a high initiate of the inner order. And he was not known for his generosity outside of his own followers. And of course, he was but a lad when she was flourishing. But I mentioned that just in passing. And one other factor that I wanted to mention about the Theosophical Society that isn't often mentioned, which is it was founded in New York City. Most people seem to think that it was in some exotic location in the British Empire somewhere. And that said, I wanted to, most of what has been said has been about her life as a theosophist or about the Theosophical Society subsequently. And I wanted to talk about her career long before the Theosophical Society came into existence here, in New York. I'm going to mention some things, and a lot of what I have to say is influenced by two different distinct threads. One is the research that I did for my own book, The Story of the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light. And because unavoidably, if you talk about the HB of L, you also talk about the latter period when Blavatsky was involved in theosophy. The other is the most interesting book by a friend of mine, Paul Johnson, who lectured on it, by the way, here in Atlanta at the Theosophical Society. The local chapter is very old. I mean, it goes back to World War I. Their charter is on their wall. And Paul has, in his book, The Masters, which I think it was published by the State University of New York Press, which is a prestigious press, a lot more prestigious than any of my publishers. But even my current publisher, who is not with us tonight, but should be. I wanted to talk about Blavatsky before. That is, before the founding of the Theosophical Society. First of all, she and Colonel Olcott were in Egypt, and she was a trance medium. One of the interesting things about her trance mediumship is her control was a being calling itself Katie King. Now, we're talking about a time where the only world communication aside from hard copy letters was the telegraph. So if you were in Cairo or in Illinois, let's say, at that time, the amount of contact amongst people would have been relatively minimal. And yet Katie King shows up with mediums all across the spectrum of the 19th century spiritualist movement. of which she was more or less a part. So it's very interesting that her control was Katie King. By the way, in my own works, I have decoded what the name Katie King means, and you'll have to read Secret Cipher the Euphonauts to find out what I had to say about that, because it's not really relevant to now. In any case, when she and Colonel Olcott got to Egypt and were doing trans-channeling, they became members of the original Hermetic Brotherhood of Light, also known as the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, and Luxor being a city in ancient Egypt. And they were fortunate enough to meet one of the Coptic magicians who was an adept of the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light, and they became members of the HBFL. His name was Palos Medamon, and of course, we usually think of Egyptians today as Arab and Muslim and Arabic speaking. The Copts, as the name implies, are Egyptian, and while they converted to Christianity sometime in the early years of Christianity, they were one of the first communities of Christians. They continue to speak a late form of the Egyptian language. I'm sure they're literate in Arabic as well. And they are a minority in Egypt, but they are a large minority. They even have their own pope. Out of that, you have an ancient, very ancient Egyptian tradition coming from a school of magic from very ancient Egypt, maybe even pre-dynastic Egypt, called Heka. And it is my opinion that the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light comes out of that. And among the first Western people to get involved in that were Olcott and Blavatsky. And they were involved for quite some time. They had some kind of falling out. I don't, know what that was over. It was probably something that separated the later Theosophical Society from P.B. Randolph's Brotherhood of Euless in this country, and the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light as transmitted through Randolph and through Max Theon, a son of a Polish rabbi who became, the name Max Theon means great God, and he was a very influential teacher who was Mira Alfasa's first teacher before she went to India. So the theosophical stuff came after that falling out with the HBFL, and that continued to be an issue for the people in the HBFL, especially after it migrated here to North Georgia. That's the state of Georgia, not the little country in the edge of the former Russian Empire. Also in the shall we say, first generation Theosophical Society people, including Blavatsky herself, they did not get along well with the Brotherhood of Euless or the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light, and vice versa. Their difference, as far as I've been able to see from reading both, is they had a different view of reincarnation. The HBFL thought that one ascended if one lived a full and rich life, and the Theosophists were much more into the concept of reincarnation, which was anathema to the HBFL. In any case, I wanted to talk a little bit about Paul Johnson's very interesting theory because it speaks to something that was fundamental in Blavatsky's work, which was her contact with the masters, which was the name of Paul Johnson's book. She and Colonel Olcott claimed to be in direct communication with what I call in Secrets of the Black Lodge Revealed, which has a chapter by Blavatsky. I believe it's called something like Lodges of Magic, which she didn't like because she thought that mysticism was superior to magic, which indeed it may be, I don't know. But in any case, her instruction on how magic can go wrong is worth reading in and of itself, since I am directly a witness of how wrong it can go. So it can go right also, but it can go very, very wrong. And when it goes wrong, it's very powerful, dark stuff. Trust me on that, folks. So when Blavatsky and Olcott got to India, they began to have in-person communications with the masters, sometimes called the ascended masters. Well, if they were ascended, how is it that they could take human form? Well, I won't give you Paul Johnson's theory. You have to read his book. I think it's a very important book to understand all of Blavatsky and theosophical teachings. But apparently, both the secret chiefs and the Black Lodge, which are at war with one another, are capable of at least simulating, if not taking on, human form. And in Old Diary Leaves, a book by Colonel Olcott that is contemporary with Blavatsky, he talks a great deal about their meetings with remarkable beings, to borrow a term from Gurdjieff. And, well, he said meetings with remarkable men, but one wonders at a certain point whether you're dealing with humans or something beyond human. And it seems that although we have the, she referred to the secret chiefs as Mahatmas, term, interestingly enough, that was adopted by the followers of Mohandas K. Gandhi, who was influenced, but I don't believe he ever called himself a Mahatma, which in Sanskrit and some subsequent Indian languages means great soul or something close to that.
Yeah,
Maha is big or huge or a superlative, and Atman is the soul, which the Buddhists deny exists, but which Hindus, generally speaking, think is real. So Mahatma is the great soul, and they ascribed that to Gandhi, who was spiritual but not religious, I think is the correct way of putting it. Be that as it may, that comes a couple of generations later, and the only person of interest here to me is Krishnamurti, who I think was a genuine enlightened being living amongst us in Ojai, California, for most of his life. Once he split off from the, what was it called, the Order of the Silver Star, which
Yes.
he eventually renounced that, told it to dissolve, and spent the rest of his life as an individual teacher. When he had very famous people who were among his followers, including, I guess, his co-workers as well. including some theoretical physicists who found that what he had to say was very much in line with what subatomic physics was beginning to show. I believe he even did some a book or two with David Bohm, the physicist. But I think that Blavatsky was influenced the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light well before the Theosophical Society, and the fact that she had been an initiate, notwithstanding the falling out that they had, an initiate of Heka, the most ancient Egyptian secret teachings, as transmitted through the Coptic magician Palos Metamun, a very mysterious figure who apparently also met the American magus P.B. Randolph, who in turn influenced all kinds of European magicians. I think that the occult history of Blavatsky goes into what Carole had to say about her being a high initiate of the inner order. And for that alone, I think certainly qualifies as a major, major torch bearer. End of rant.
Can I make a comment?
That was phenomenally deep and very welcome. Thank you.
Can I make a comment on that? I sometimes listen to someone, his name is Daniel List. He calls himself the dark journalist. He loves to talk about conspiracy theories and all sorts of things. He was a former New York Times reporter and other things like that. But he has some really interesting and important people, well, powerful people on his YouTube channel. And one of his segments was on Madame Blavatsky. So he mentioned something you touched upon, Alan. I think that probably is. I was wondering what it was. He said that from his readings, he said that the initiates of other groups were very angry at her for revealing secrets that should not have been revealed. And they gathered together and put some kind of curse on her so that she would have trouble for the rest of her life. Did you ever hear anything like that before?
Yeah, I've heard that, but I've also heard the reverse of that, in fact, I can't even mention it on the program, but her reaction to hearing that P.B. Randolph had committed suicide, which is a debatable point. He probably was murdered, but that was the story at the time, and her reaction to that would show how vituperative both sides were on that. They were all late Victorian metaphysicians and or magicians, some of both in Blavatsky's case, I would say. Mm-hmm. She encountered harsh critics at a later time from the Society of the SPR, the Society for Psychical Research, of which I was an elected member at one time. So it wasn't just Houdini who, mm-hmm. I think, in looking for proof of the hereafter, was a very harsh debunker, mm-hmm. as my late friend, the amazing, my friend Jim Mosley called him the amusing Randy. Randy was a complex person, but basically he thought it was all hooey and nonsense. But he was a stage magician, and he claimed to be able to reproduce any effect that appears in mediumship or whatever. Actually, there's a film somewhere in the archives called "Is There Sex After Death?" by Alan Abel, who was involved in many amusing, very New York type hoaxes of his own. One was the Society to Clothe Animals, which
I remember that.
Yeah, crazy.
But in his film, "Is There Sex After Death?" Randy does a segment where he does a fake seance, and it's very impressive on film. But the fact that Randy could reproduce under his own circumstances certain effects that are seen in mediumship in no way says one thing or another about trance mediums. Because I personally, in fact, Gene Steinberg and I were in Randy's hotel room at the famous 1967 National UFO Conference, otherwise known as the Giant Saucer Show. So we were in his room, and he was showing us how he claimed that, what was his name? The thoughtographer.
Carillion?
Hmm?
Carillion? Like Carillion photography?
No. He would produce, he'd get roaring drunk and then produce photos from thought.
I
And
remember his name, but I remember him.
yeah, well, the thing is that Randy said this is how he does it. And he used one of those little things. People who have traveled to Florida back in the day and bought one of these souvenir things that had a sort of cheesecakey photo in it, and you pressed a button on it and it lit up. He was using one of those, which he palmed, which is what stage magicians do. And he wanted to show Gene and I how, gosh, I can't think of his name. I really feel bad about it.
Ted
Yes.
Sirios.
Yes, Ted Sirios. He said, this is how Sirios does it. And keep in mind that he was not a bad stage magician. I mean, he was not A-list, but he was a good B-list. He even designed the guillotine that was used in a certain famous rock act. It's still around, actually. But what he showed us, I think Gene was fooled, but I got it the first time, and I told him. I said, what you're doing is you've got one of those little things, and you're palming it. And Sirios has been watched closely by many psychic researchers, medical doctors, etc., and none of them have spotted anything like I spotted from a professional magician, which this guy wasn't. He was, you know, a salt of the earth, blue collar worker who could only do this when he was roaring drunk, which is interesting. That was serious. So I spotted Randy doing that. And the next morning he was on the Today Show on NBC, then the prevailing early morning thing. And he showed the same thing as this is how Ted Sirios does it. And he went right up to camera 2 and flashed this thing into the camera. But, you know, that's nonsense. And I guess that's the point of, I mean, Houdini probably was infinitely better magician, but he wasn't looking to expose. He and Dunninger, the mentalist, often worked together. He was looking for proof of survival because apparently he took he was a Jewish boy from New York named Eric Weiss in his real life, and he took his mother's death very hard. So apparently he was looking for proof of survival, and it just shows how futile that can be, because when the code that he left with his wife was cracked by a famous medium in the 1930s, she said, oh, well, he has survived. And she was surrounded by apparently fundamentalist ministers who said, oh, no, that it can't be real. So she changed her mind and said, no, that wasn't the code. So I have one of my own that only my eldest son can know, and only after I have gone on to my, let us hope, reward.
You will. Don't worry.
Don't worry, be happy.
I just know better.
Yeah.
Alan, when we have time, I'd very, very much to speak with you. It was suggested I do that years ago.
I think it's a very good idea. You have to either have a trusted person who you tell it to, but who will not say it to anyone else unless they receive the code through some kind of trance channeling or mediumship or whatever. The alternative to that is to write it in a hidden place and only tell the hidden place so that no living human being will know it after you have gone on to your doubtless great reward beyond and will not come back as a cockroach like Hitler, you know.
Write it into one of your 3 scripts.
Yeah, well, as you know, it has to be someplace that the person you designate knows to look, but only after they receive the word or phrase, you know. It's just, it's a good test. I know that Professor Ian Stevenson, most famous for his work at the University of Virginia on reincarnation cases in children, spontaneous cases, no hypnosis cases at all. He left a complex code, and if it has appeared in the years since his passing at a very advanced age, I haven't heard it, and I think we probably would have. But, you know, the Houdini code was what, 15 years after he had passed beyond? That Arthur Ford, Reverend Arthur Ford, a very famous magician of his generation, later involved with Bishop Pike, the controversial Episcopal bishop who unfortunately went looking for Jesus in the Judean desert and died of thirst. He had a bottle of water, a Coke bottle full of water. That was all that he went out with. However, Arthur Ford was a magnificent medium, and he cracked the Houdini code. Cracked is probably the wrong word. He received it from the other side. So I don't, mediumship is not my number one proof of survival, if you will. I'm more interested in the channeled materials that come out because good friends of mine, like the Light Lines group in Kentucky, that produced the raw material, they had no pretense about what they did. They said that they could teach anyone to channel. And what can I say? There are good channelings and bad channelings, and good channelers and bad channelers. Not necessarily fraudulent to be bad. Sometimes you're in touch with something that has never been human and might be, oh, well, we're getting away from Madame Blavatsky. She was one hell of a medium and a torchbearer for sure.
Thank you very much. That was incredibly amazing, and I'm grateful for it. Others are here, and I wish I budgeted more than an hour and a half for this show because everyone has so much more to contribute. But to start, Blavatsky is now in our Hall of Heroes. Does anyone object?
No,
of course
Okay,
not.
very good. So it's done. If I had an apple, I would hit it against the table. And all of you have brought us wonderful worlds of the paranormal, worlds of the beyond, worlds greater than the one that we're currently in collectively. So how can people look for you and find you online or in other ways? And we'll start with Setna of Khemet.
Very simple. You can go to Michael K. Waterman at Facebook.com. You can go to either Instagram or Facebook for my Pernateru Temple. You can do it by Phone a Wizard, which is my work services on Facebook also, soon to be a website, which is coming. Or you can get me by phone. You can call me 516-650-3691. I was a Long Islander for a long time, so I can't get rid of that phone number. Or mkwaterman@icloud.com.
Thank you very much. And we proceed to Ammon. Ammon Dunkin, how can people find you and all your wonderful music and all your recorded meetings?
Okay, well, I have a YouTube channel. It is called Michael and Diane Dunkin. That's 2 N's in Diane, and that's Dunkin like Dunkin' Donuts without the apostrophe. So Michael and Diane Dunkin. We have over 130 videos of our celestial team meetings, some of our artwork, some of my music, Maitreya messages from Lord Maitreya. Also, if you Google my name, Reverend Michael Dunkin, again, Dunkin, my albums will come up on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music also. I have 5 albums and an EP of spiritual songs that I've written and recorded and produced and distributed on those platforms. And then if you want to get in touch with me, I have an email address, michaelduncan1@hotmail.com, and look to some websites for my book that'll be coming out next year in 2026, The League of Azure Blue Angels. So that'll be out, and you can check that out.
Thank you
Thank you
very much.
Hercules,
Sure.
I'm sorry. One more thing. Alan, I was just wondering if you knew anything about Thomas H. Burgoyne and his 2 books or 3 books, The Light of Egypt, because I know he was one of those groups, and maybe I can contact you after the show. I think he was one of those groups that was theosophical in nature, but they had some differences with Blavatsky in their group.
He was H.B. of L, and The Light of Egypt was originally published in 2 volumes, the second one posthumously and channeled, which is very interesting. But yeah, get in touch with me. I'll be glad to share what I know. When I did the book on the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light, I learned a great deal about Burgoyne and his former partner who settled here in Georgia. It's quite a story.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd really appreciate that, because those were two of the first books that my wife got from her father in her early, like, mature spiritual formation phase. So, and I've looked all over the place, and I can hardly find anything on Burgoyne or those guys. So yeah, I'll get in touch.
Church of Light, I think it still exists. So it's California based.
Church of Light. Okay.
Church of Light. That's Burgoyne's.
Oh, it is. Okay. Thank you.
Apulia, how can people find you and enter your world?
Yes, well, I'm on Facebook. You can look me up, Carole Gonzalez, and you can email me at apulia2001@proton.mail. I am always interested in talking with people about their dreams in particular. I worked with dreams for many years through the Casey organization. We used to have these Search for God groups in New York City. So I really enjoyed doing that kind of work. So I'm always open to anyone who's interested in chatting with me.
The Edgar Case folks have a show on my channel. So they're on once a month and have the show. And I'm
from Virginia or New Jersey?
From New York.
Oh yes, there's a new center. I don't go to that anymore, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they're on the channel already, and also I'm starting a new series of shows on dreams, so I'll invite you to that one.
Oh, I would love to do that. Mm-hmm.
And any other one of you that are interested, just let me know and I'll arrange it.
Dreams.
Now we go to Paul Dale Roberts, Demon Hunter. How can people find your world and enter it?
Well, they can pull their magnifying glass, look at Google, look at Bing. They can Paul Dale Roberts books, and you'll see a lot of my books. They're now on Google Books. They're on Google Play. I have a few on Amazon. I have a couple, I think, are still in Barnes and Nobles. So I have books all over the place. And I got a podcast called All Things Paranormal, thanks to Hercules. And I have another podcast called The Waiting Room Podcast. And I was also, too, before I go, Uri Geller. He was known to bend spoons and forks. Well, I have a little magic trick myself. I have a plastic fork here, a plastic comb here, and if I rub it like this, it bends. Now, see if you can debunk that.
He used to do that. I met him, Uri Geller, a long time ago. He'd do this with the spoon and it would just bend. I couldn't do it, but who knows?
I don't know.
Well, thank
But
you.
That was great. That
Thank
was
you.
great.
I'm sure that'll keep us up at night trying to figure out how you did it. And that's the most unique way anyone ever ended their segment, by bending something. So thank you very much, Paul. And now we have Alan. Alan, how can people enter your world?
Oh, that's a different question from how could they find my stuff. But I am informed by my publisher
so
who
many interesting things to share that
Okay.
It's more than just finding you. It's getting immersed in this world that you are very familiar with and that you swim in.
Okay. If you want to swing with me, let me revise that. If you want to get into my world, first of all, I've been on the internet since it was the ARPANET. So if you just spell my name right, Allen, Greenfield, Greenfield, there will be hundreds of entries, some of them friendly to me, some of them not so friendly to me. And I'm also on Facebook and X and Tumblr and Threads every day. Well, maybe I skip a day now and again, but virtually every day, basically the same stuff. I also, I am told by my publisher, and again, I have nothing to do with publishing at all. So I'm just taking the information. My publisher says all of my books are in print. The first choice, for a variety of reasons that I believe I mentioned on a previous show, is to get them from Amazon. You can, most of them also have a budget edition in Kindle if you do that. And they also have a hard copy edition for people like me who really can't read a book on a screen. And I gather that almost all of the, if not all of the finer booksellers online and some brick and mortar bookstores, if there are any left, also have all of my books or can get them. So, I mentioned Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts, the perennial bestseller, but also Secrets of the Black Lodge Revealed, which speaks to a lot of the things that we've been discussing today and in previous episodes. And doubtless, Hercules permitting, we will talk about even further in the future. Have I plugged myself well?
Plugged yourself well, and actually, I was going to approach you and oh God, I'm blanking on his name right now.
Olaf?
Yes, that I'd like to do a special show dedicated to each of your books.
Wow! Let me tell you, I'm for it. But he's the boss. So
okay, yeah, Olaf has said yes in the past, and plus I wanted to do a series on Hermeticism, and I had approached him about Maybe you guys get involved in that if you'd like. So if
That-
you're interested, when that comes together, you'll be invited to speak with that.
Some people say I am a media whore, and they're right. So anytime, I never, ever turn down an offer to appear live and in color on whatever, except the History Channel. I used to do stuff on there. I
Yes,
don't
you
anymore.
did. Yes, you did.
I was on the
Yeah.
History Channel once. I was part of a documentary they did on their series on barbarians. I was traipsing around New York at the time to Store the Barbarian in leather and furs and a giant sword on my back. So I was on the History Channel, and that was a one-time deal too.
I have to say too, I had two things with the History Channel. Monster Quest. So in the credits, they gave me a thanks because I gave them a lot of information about Mothman in Sacramento. And then I did a History Channel thing for ancient aliens. So I gave information about Mount Shasta, and they credited me on the IMDb.
Awesome. Anybody else want to share their credits since we're just doing media whoredom together?
Well, these days I am also a monthly contributor to Today's Witch magazine, which is brand new. Edward Sod is the producer, and I have two great, really great articles coming out December and January. So I'm kind of proud of that.
Fantastic. Congratulations. Anyone else? Okay.
Buy
I have
my
something.
books.
What happened?
I said, buy my books. I'm such a, well, look, I live on Social Security. Give me a break, folks.
There
Well,
you
come
go.
down.
Buy
I'll feed
books.
Alan. You're not far from me. Come down. I'll feed you. You're in Atlanta. I'm in
Atlanta is a whole nother world from Savannah.
Oh, I know.
My
Savannah-
advice is don't swim at Savannah Beach. The undertow
No.
will kill you.
No, don't do anything by the waterfront in Savannah. Trust me on this one. I live in the woods out in Chatham Parkway.
Oh, okay.
I am very much, I guess, north of the Midtown, which, believe me, needs a bologna sandwich. That's about all it is. Loads of commercialism now in Savannah itself.
Well, I haven't been in a long time. I'm originally from Augusta, which is on the Savannah River, which means that the tritium from the nuclear plant across the river comes down to your territory. So drink up and glow.
And I have something to share. My book, Theurgy, 7 Approaches to Spiritual Connection, just came out on Llewellyn. It started as a show like we have right here today. And after 7 years or so of talking on the show, we decided to write a book. And somebody pitched the idea to Llewellyn. Llewellyn liked the idea. It took 2 years of working on it, but it's finally out. So that's new and exciting in my neck of the woods. And I want to thank you all. You're all incredibly awesome people. And you all shed a lot of light on very obscure topics tonight. I'm very appreciative of it. And I look forward to our next conversation and our next adventure together. Everybody, if I don't get to speak with you, happy holidays.
Happy holidays,
Same
everyone.
to you. Same to you.
God bless you, everyone.
Life, health, and prosperity. Oh. Anti Dot Sanev.
God bless you. Peace.
Peace.
And joyous journeys and amazing adventures.